woke up and realized Dexter Morgan moved into your neighborhood, how quickly would its criminal activities get him caught in real life? To answer this, I hired a criminal lawyer and asked him hard-hitting questions about Dexter, the way he murders, the way he uses blood splatter, all to answer if he'd actually get away with it. And the results? Let's just say Dexter isn't as safe as he thinks he is. The questions will get more intense as we go on, but first I wanted to ask my lawyer the basics. The basic structure of Dexter Morgan's plastic kill rooms. Because to prepare for a kill, all he does is break into a victim's home and wrap a specific room in plastic sheets. After that, he puts on his body cover and simply goes for the kill. Would this simple process really prevent any evidence from forming in real life? Well, first I asked my lawyer if blood is still detectable with this plastic setup, and the lawyer's response was the following.
In real life, blood splatter may still seep through tiny imperfections in the plastic, holes or tiny punctures.
On top of that, I've even heard of occasions where the blood can directly infuse through the plastic because of the heat. But let's say our baby boy Dexter somehow did an impossibly great job at cleaning every single ounce of blood. Well, the lawyer had a scary answer to even that scenario.
Modern forensic science has tools, luminol and blue star, that can detect blood even after it's wiped away.
A tool Dexter literally uses right here. And if that wasn't enough to prove that these cheap little plastic rooms wouldn't actually save him, let me introduce you to secondary transfers. Something the lawyer says is one of the biggest weaknesses that criminals face.
Blood might get on the gloves, shoes, or clothes and be trapped outside the plastic zone.
The truth is, the splattering of blood is so corrupt and volatile that even slicing with a knife leads to such a sprinkle, a volume of blood that's just uncontainable. If just a little bit of that blood got onto his shoe and he walks out of the door and his shoe touches anything, the blood has officially spread outside of his plastic zone, which is exactly enough to get him caught. But I care for our Bay Harbor butcher. We cannot just let him get caught this easy, even though technically he did just move into our neighborhood, like in the intro. So I don't know why, but anyways, so I then asked the lawyer, what are the major mistakes that Dexter Morgan is making? He instantly responded by mentioning repetition. Repetition in his setup.
The repetition, the same plastic wrap, kill room setup. It's a huge red flag, forensic red flag. Because pattern could be a crucial fact to prove a crucial prosecution theory.
The reason this repeated setup is such a horrible idea is the repetitive pattern proves it is one person that did this. What this means is, say for example, Dexter gets away with murder for 5 years straight. But on the 6th year, maybe he's making out with Rita, he kinda gets lousy and he gets caught. And they figure out that Dexter is the murderer that does his murders in this plastic type of room. He has a specific type of environment he makes. Now, if they uncover a bunch of old murders that had the same plastic room setup, they can instantly link it back to Dexter Morgan. They can just dig up a bunch of things and point it at him, leading to such a more severe charge. Why would someone want to build a repeated portfolio you can just point at someone? Other serial killers are obviously very smart, where they'll adapt or even mimic other killers, so it becomes very hard to nail it on one person. He also briefly mentioned the use of cameras.
So CCTV, traffic cameras could also be rich sources of evidence, or even at least a clue.
And it's interesting how the show itself doesn't focus on them at all, even though cameras is probably what would get him caught so easily. Other killers walk around with disguises, like Joe Goldberg with his hat or Benjamin with his Daredevil suit, but Dexter, his face is just right there, out in the open. In real life, dude, just put on a mask, change up your kill room here and there, and yeah, enjoy a free life. Why would you do this? Well, what are you doing? You're welcome for the free tips, by the way. Just send me some Cash App or something, let me know. But there is a bigger problem at hand. The problem is Dexter is a blood-obsessed weirdo, meaning after every kill, he collects a drop of blood from every victim, which becomes a very dangerous possession, especially in scenes like this where he lost his blood slides and his beautiful big eyes widen up and he's looking so lost and confused. I'm doing too much, I'm sorry. Going back to the blood slides, I then asked the lawyer, how does possession of someone else's blood tie into legality?
There's no violation of the law pertaining to someone's having possession of someone else's blood. But of course, possessing blood is not the usual thing for anyone. So the context will come into play. In an active crime investigation.
So I guess the actual keeping of blood isn't illegal, but since it's so unusual, it raises some big concerns that could then lead to some future verdict. The most interesting questions I have are still remaining. These questions were about Dexter's daytime job as a Miami PD blood splatter analyst, because there's many scenes like this where Dexter will solve a crime by analyzing the blood patterns, even figuring out their height, weight, and age simply looking at blood. Of course, in the show, he's basically always right. Oh my god. But is that actually realistic? Yes and no.
Post killer is taller. When he stabbed, the trajectory analysis will show that the blood came from a higher elevation, but that is not something definite.
Which sort of means that realistically the level of accuracy he shows isn't actually real, but I'm sure it could actually help narrow down some of your potential candidates you have.
This guy knew how to use a blade. So we're looking for a sushi chef. Yes.
Which is actually very helpful, and that's probably the most important part. On top of that, to make Dexter's job even harder, the lawyer then says,
Doesn't mean that a person's blood in a crime scene is already definite he's the one who killed.
And he told me to look into this specific case, a case that genuinely baffled me. This is a very famous case where a man named Joe Bryan served 33 years of prison time for a crime he didn't commit. His wife died in 1985, and the blood splatter analysis pointed him as the killer. So he was then falsely jailed and locked up all the way until 2018, where the case was reopened and people saw some faults in the blood analysis. Most of these faults being the fact that the court over-relied on blood evidence. Even though this man had an alibi that proved he was over 120 miles away at some conference when this murder happened, he was still jailed for 3 decades because he had a flashlight in the trunk of his car with some blood on it. That's literally it. I'm not kidding. That's it. They somehow used that little blood, added some cool fancy terms to prove that he was on the scene, and that's where it came from. I hope this proves to you guys that blood in real life should be used as a supporting evidence, just a sort of backup information and not a complete basis of information and evidence. So Dexter jumping to so many quick conclusions in the show is actually very harmful, and I wouldn't want this guy on my case at all, because it could easily end up just like this Joe Bryan case where he ends up arresting the wrong guy. It shows just how hard it is to really judge crime based off of blood, especially when there's insane people like Hannibal Lecter who completely faked the splatter of blood using a machine that poured out blood in a realistic way. Someone's neck would pour blood, which was just a crazy scene when I watched it. Oh my god. But now let's get really juicy, guys, because this next segment is probably the most important. Let's talk about the actual disposal of the bodies, because since we aren't talking about Hannibal Lecter who just eats his proof for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, does the way Dexter hide his bodies by dumping them in the Gulf Stream, does that actually work? To be honest, the lawyer in this question was kind of useless.
There might be challenging if you will actively search for a specific body, but it doesn't mean that it is impossible for it to be discovered.
Oh, nice! If they do active research, they can find something. Cool! But at least online research kind of proved to me that throwing a body even in deep water currents has many drawbacks. First, the Gulf Stream moves so randomly, and even though Dexter probably wants his bodies disposed, blown away in some other current, they could easily just circle back and end up in a discoverable place because of how strong and randomly moving the current is. Also, when a body decomposes, it releases gas, helping them float. And even though Dexter weighs them down with these stones, even if there's a small rip in the bags because of this really fast current, that could easily be enough to let out a couple of the rocks and the body simply floats on up. Easy, which perfectly aligns with what the lawyer said, where he mentioned that the police are still constantly finding random body discoveries years and years after they've occurred. But okay. Here's where things take a weird twist. Because what if I told you the way Dexter disposed his bodies when he was younger was actually smarter? Because if you've seen Dexter Original Sin, he actually disposes bodies by taking them to Alligator Alley and having the alligators eat them. And yeah, even me laughing, it just sounds like a plan that's so stupid and crazy, but it works. And the lawyer himself totally agrees.
Any animal for that matter will consume the body. It's almost no chance for you to discover the body.
I'm actually impressed. And wait. Here's an even crazier fact. Even if they aren't actually fully eaten, alligators and other animals can cause so much damage to a body that it's unidentifiable. So I hope this never happens to you, but if you become his neighbor and he kills you and he jumps you into the alligator alley, even if the alligator doesn't like your taste, you guys taste like weird, whatever, he could probably bite onto you in such weird ways, maul off your face, that he wouldn't no one would recognize you. You're just a corpse. Just kind of sad. I'm so sorry, baby girls. Oh my god. If you guys want to make sure the alligators don't eat you, don't worry, I'll protect you guys. Just make sure you subscribe first. Make sure you subscribe. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of this lawyer approach to Dexter. Do you agree or disagree with anything? And make sure you click this playlist filled with my acting reviews on other topics. And also subscribe, like, comment, all the good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Deuces.